the Outcast, the podcast that talks about whatever we want, basically. I'm your host, HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today we are doing another anime. We've been doing a lot of those lately, I think.
What? We've done like two, maybe
Okay,
three. So
okay, that's fair. I probably just I don't think I've watched anime in such a short period of my life because when after like literally after you told after I finished watching this you came up with Beastars, so probably in my mind it's like very connected. I think that's the explanation, but
fair
well.
enough.
So today we are with an anime that I got recommended, and I think Wolf, were you recommended this by the same person? I think you were.
I've been recommended it by a few different people, but yeah, I was also recommended it to watch it by the same person you were. But I've also been recommended to watch it by many other people too.
So if the people didn't read the title or didn't look at the thumbnail, we're talking about Violet Evergarden, which
Heavy.
is yeah, this is actually when I was. We want to talk a bit about how we came into this. So we have this friend from the server, and she just started posting one of the quote, probably the most famous quote from the show as her, as her Discord status.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, wait, what do you mean? And it's like, oh, that's a show, that's an anime, and it's like, okay, sure, maybe we'll check it out, and then we did.
I mean, basically, my thought. This is what I knew going into Violet Evergarden, right? The only thing I've ever been told is it's sad. You'll cry.
Yeah,
that's all I've been told. Like I knew
that's
one other
another.
thing going into the show, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
basically been all I've been told going into the show, and that's literally all I knew.
yeah, I that's also what I've heard. It's like, oh, this show is gonna make you cry, and it's like, I was like, okay, you know what, challenge accepted. Let's do this, and oh boy, am I regretting it.
Mm.
But yeah, so we kind of checked the show out. I checked kind of a heads up before we actually go into this. I checked it out long ago,
Mm-hmm.
at least a
You
few
watched it a little
months.
bit way sooner than what I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Wolf is a bit more fresh into this than me, but at the same time, I still remember what I watched, and I still feel comfortable enough talking about it. And I will also say that again, as someone who doesn't watch a lot of anime and stuff, I enjoyed this one.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoyed in quotes because it is a sad show, but I mean. I like, but I mean, I like the world. I like the characters. I like the idea behind this. I don't remember actually seeing something with that concept done before, so that's
Mm.
fun. And yeah, that's what I have to say. When I wasn't crying my eyes out, I enjoyed this. What about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It's very, very well done, right? Like um, it is very much a heavy show, and it's very much something that I think right is worth the experience, no matter what. I think it's worth watching the show to experience it and to kind of see something that's very different in terms of what you would normally expect from anime. It's very much like it's on the softer side, I guess you would say, in terms of anime. Like anime, generally when people think of anime, they think of a lot of action, heavy stuff.
The shonen
Sometimes,
stuff,
yeah,
basically.
generally that's kind of the more popular thing, and understandably so for some reasons. I too like shonen. I will admit, I
By the
grew up
way,
on
this is
shonen.
this, this is completely unrelated, but a few days ago, my best friend told me that I would make a great shonen protagonist, and I have no idea if I should take this as a compliment or not.
Eh. They live hard lives, so maybe not. Maybe that's not a compliment.
Okay. Um, hey, bestie, if you're listening to this, thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, it's very much vastly different from that, right? And I'm really glad I got to see it and I finally sat down to watch it because I
You
think
know,
it. Oh,
this
go
is
ahead.
interesting because I think it's kind of like, honestly, it feels like a combination of, of shonen and, tradition and, traditional life anime, if you know what, the slice of life anime, if you know what I mean, because it kind of has this a bit of both, I will say.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see where you're coming from in that. Yeah, it's very much a good show. Like everything, like first episode, right? Not spoiling anything about it, but just kind of saying
We'll
in a
get to
general,
spoilers in a bit. Yeah.
just in a general sense, like the way this show looks is just beautiful, right?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
music as well.
Yeah, the music, the outside, even the opening, like they have some, like you can tell that this show has a very, strong artistic merit to it,
Hmm.
and whoa.
Like those opening shots and the cinematography of all that is just absolutely beautiful, and it never stops being that way. There's a lot of just amazing shots that they do, and you can kind of see exactly what they're trying to do with the shots, right? There's one in
Hmm.
particular that kind of stuck out in my mind that I'll definitely mention later, but just absolutely amazingly gorgeous looking show.
Yeah. So with that said, before we get into spoilers, I do want to mention something. It was probably obvious, but we are only talking about the one season of the show that you can
Hmm.
find on Netflix. We are aware there is a special
Special and a
episode.
movie.
Uh, yeah, and there's a movie as well. We are not gonna. These are discussions for another time.
Hmm.
For this podcast, we are currently focusing on the on the first season alone.
Hmm.
And actually, one question, I guess the answer is gonna be no, but have you read the manga based on which this was based on?
No.
Okay, same here. So no manga comparisons in this.
Unfortunately.
We are very sorry. Maybe later, I don't know. But yeah, so um, should we go into spoilers?
I think so. Let's jump straight into it.
Okay, so spoilers from this point on. If you haven't seen the show and you are interested, this is your chance to close the podcast. Go ahead, watch the show, and come back.
Hmm.
Spoilers in three, two, one. You still here? Good. So Violet Evergarden, is not only the name of the show; it's also our main protagonist.
Hmm.
And when we and as the show goes along, we find out that she was kind of like a killing machine in a sense.
Hmm. Yes, it starts
Uh,
off with her recovering from her injuries from a war, and through a lot of this, we quickly find out that she was basically, a child soldier. She was raised to kill and fight in a war, and that's all she was ever raised for.
yes.
And it's through this that, we watch her story unfold in the terms of one, learning how to reintegrate. I guess you would say, kind of reintegrate back into society after fighting through a war like that and
Yeah,
being
this
that
is
kind of person. But we
Yeah,
also.
honestly, that's what's interesting about it because you don't like there are stories about this, but you don't really see, you don't really see a story about essentially a soldier after war trying to integrate back into real life.
Mhm. Well, someone told me, right, that, before I started watching, I said, hey, I'm going to go watch this show. And, to a friend, and they said, oh, well, I think you'll really enjoy it because it's the story of recovery after a war. Like, that's what it is. And I'm like, after having watched it, they're not wrong, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think well, that's not untrue, I should say. But I don't think it's necessarily the right way to describe this show, if you will.
I guess the best way to talk about it is that it's something that happens, but it's not the main focus necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's, that, the recovery after a war and seeing what this world looks like, and what where they live at looks like after the war is very much kind of a background thing. You learn of it and about that through the background storytelling. But the main focus is on Violet and her journey to come to know and understand what it means to feel, right? Because she very much, through her upbringing and through what she went through,
And
doesn't
in her own
understand
words,
feelings.
mhm, and in her own words, she wants to know what "I love you" means.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. I'm not sure how they call it in English because I watched this show in Japanese
I watched
because
it in
that's
English.
yeah. So how do they call her? And I watched it in Japanese but with Hebrew subtitles. So what do they call her occupation in English?
Her occupation?
Yeah, what she works at.
An auto memories doll.
Okay, I don't know is though. Gotcha.
What did they call it
I
in Japanese? I'm curious.
I have no idea what the Japanese name is, but like I mean, just because I don't know what the English name is, I just want to make sure
Oh.
with you that because I would have, based on how I cite it, like if I Google translated it from Japanese to Hebrew to English, so I would call it a puppet, not a doll. So thank
Ah.
you for telling me
Okay.
it's a doll,
Yeah.
not a puppet. Okay, but and this is actually something I do like about her job. That honestly, I'm not sure if this is something that used to exist at some point, or if, but
I
I
I don't
I
know. I don't
really
think it
like,
has.
but I really like this idea that there's actually a service where someone writes letters for you,
Mm.
and because maybe you can't do it, or maybe or you have troubles expressing yourself, and there's someone that does it for you. And having having a friend who writes articles for sites and stuff. This is really interesting. This is a really interesting take on this. So I have no idea if it existed at some point, but this is part of the world that I really enjoyed.
I think it kind of did in some regard way back when education was more sparse in some areas, right? And it still might in
Probably.
some areas, but I don't think anything in particular like this has ever existed, right? Because
Because
this
the way this world works, I guess you could say, you can tell this is not like modern times. This was a long time ago.
mhm.
Like
Think World
like
War One, World War Two, World War One, really,
some
maybe even before World War One.
something like that. Not before the 40s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I guess that's the best way to describe it.
yeah.
But so yeah, the main plot is that Valad Evergarden was a air child soldier who fought on the front line with her commander, who also was kind of her boyfriend in a sense.
I wouldn't say
Uh,
boyfriend. That's
that's why I said. That's why I said in a sense.
I would say father figure more so than anything.
Yeah, this. You say that, but at the same time, there's, the way they play up the "I love you" thing. At a few points it was kind of hard to figure out if it was like a family "I love you" or a romantic "I love you" or a platonic one. They seem to kind of jump back and forth on what
I don't know.
type of love it
I
is.
personally always took it as very much a familial thing, as him being more of a father figure than anything else. Maybe
You
there are
know,
people who see it in a much different way. If that's so, that's fair. But I saw it
because
as a
I don't know
familial
something.
thing.
Because something about his character design reminded me more. He looked, not necessarily her age, but he looked relatively close.
Mm, that's
And
fair.
and and there was something, like the necklace that he buys her and stuff, and she talks to his mother about this. I don't know. I got more boyfriend vibes out of him, but I guess it's up for interpretation.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Again, I took it as more of a familial thing. So again, I think either way is fair enough, but I do think it kind of changes the perspective depending on how you look at it, right? And what you take away from that particular thing.
It's up for interpretation at the end of the day.
Hmm, fair. You're wrong, but
But
fair.
okay, I'm not wrong. You're wrong. Yeah. But, so let's just say, what is his name again? I forgot his name.
Oh god, you're gonna make me pronounce it. His first name is Gilbert, and forgive me if I butcher this
Okay,
pronunciation.
Gilbert.
Gilbert
Gilbert. Let's go.
Bougainvillea is his last name.
Okay.
Major
Okay.
Gilbert Bougainvillea.
I'm not going to bother with that last name. This is on you. But the thing is
I
that
mean, his brother's name is even harder. It's supposed to. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Diepfried, but it's spelled not that way.
well, but the thing is that Gilbert, died on the line. He died
He
during the war in Violet's arms. Hell, you know this is also something that she loses both of her hand. I'm not sure if it's just
arms,
the hands or the
arms.
arms in general. Okay,
It's
but she
arms.
loses.
They don't shy
Yes,
away
she
from showing that.
yeah, this is what I like to describe it as, a combination of show and slice of life, because there's a lot of, simple beauty, kind of regular life, beautiful shots, and then also the sun does actually, like her arms get chopped off, and there's tons of blood going around. It's like, yeesh. So
But I
yeah,
mean, it is kind of a. It is very much in reference to war and how horrible and violent that can be sometimes. So
yeah, yeah.
it's
To quote
understandable that
Jim Carrey,
it's here.
yeah, to quote Jim Carrey, "Whoa, is hell," but. Yeah, I get what you mean. Though I'm not saying this is a bad thing
Oh,
by
sure,
any
sure,
means.
sure.
Like on the contrary, I appreciate that way to, like, blow the lines, because it is interesting. It is interesting to see this kind of combination, and again, one another thing is that you can be on enough about this, but this show has like a non-linear structure. Like
Mhm.
sometimes within the slice of life, you get flashbacks to Violet's life in the wall,
Mhm.
and it is interesting that they don't do this combination as a few episodes are about this. Half a show is about this and the other half is about that. No, no, no. They really combine the two together, and I think it actually helps in creating interest and building it up as the season goes along. So
It's done episodically as well, right? Like, so each
yeah.
episode is very much its own self-contained story. I think the
Mhm.
only time it's ever really not necessarily episodic is kind of at the beginning and then close to the end. I would say the first 2 or 3 episodes are very much more connected than some of the later episodes. And the first episode to three are very much centered around this idea of Violet trying to become an auto memories doll and trying to find a job that kind of works for her. And first off, she starts working at a postal company doing odd jobs here and there, and then eventually she
Mhm.
finds out about auto memories dolls and what they do, and she wants to try that. She wants to try and be one because she thinks, again, as we said earlier, that that'll help her figure out what I love you means. But
Mhm.
and she eventually does obtain this job in the third episode, and she's told that she does have a chance to be an auto memories doll, even a very good one as well, because of a particular letter she writes for another character that you see in episode 3 named Luculia, who I
Yeah.
loved, by the way. Luculia is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. Sure, for the short time, the show, she was great.
And that's something that I think is really, I have to praise the show for. Like, they genuinely, you'll sometimes only meet a character for one episode and that is it, but that's
Oh
enough
yeah.
to enjoy them. That's enough to really fall for that character and really want to, kind of root for them in a way, or just, enjoy their story or really feel for their story and what they're going through and what they're dealing with, right?
Like one example, I think it's the episode 7. Don't quote me on this. I think that's the episode number where
Visits a
she like goes
playwright,
to the. Hmm?
where she visits a playwright. Is that the one you're
I
talking about?
think so. And
And
like, no, 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 no. It's
oof,
the one. No, like it's the one where she like goes into there's like a gathering and they assigned a doll to a
Oh, you're
certain
talking about that's episode 6, where
episode
she
6. So
meets
like
Leon.
yeah, with 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 like that comet that's supposed to show up,
Yeah, that's episode
and they need
6.
to go. So I like that idea that when they meet, he's like kind of in that he's kind of like he's afraid of taking chances because the past hurt him and stuff. And by the end of it, after he actually met her and got to know her, he's like, you know what? I want to go and see the world. I want to go and kind of start taking risks. And it's like, you know what? I would follow this guy. I would want to see what he's up to.
I kind of love that too because each episode, right, or most of the episodes, we start off with narration from the person we're visiting. It's very quick. Normally, it's just a line or two of saying, "This is how this girl came into my life and affected, or even outright changed my life," right? And this is the good she did for me in my life. And I kind of like that where it's very much Violet learning from each of these different characters what it means for different emotions, right? And then it's also these characters learning from Violet what it could mean, what different things mean within their life, right? Which is just great, very enjoyable, and more often than
Yeah.
not, very sad.
Oh
I
yeah.
have to
Like
ask.
you mentioned the playwright. You want to talk about that?
Oh, episode 7. This isn't even like this episode hit me, but that's not the episode that hit me the worst, I think, right? But episode 7, just kind of seeing, you know, Violet goes to a playwright's house, right? And this playwright just recently lost his young daughter. That's kind of the whole thing. And the entire thing of this episode is kind of learning to deal with and accept grief, more or less, right? And it's very much just ugh. Like the back and forth, and you see him, because he lost his daughter, he wants to, one of the final plays he wants to write is one for children. He wants to write a play for children in honor of her memory. And like the very end of it is, Violet, is him asking Violet, hey, could you walk towards me across the lake? And she takes it literally because she doesn't quite
Yeah.
understand what his meaning behind the words, because that's kind of her issue, right? And so she decides, okay, I'll just jump across the lake. And that's exactly what she tries to do. Now, she doesn't quite make it the whole way, but she does make it far enough. And that was always his young daughter's wish, right? Was to fly across the lake one day. And he
Yes.
sees her accomplish this, and it kind of just opens up, right? Everything for him, just, helps him move on just a little bit with his grief, right? And it's just very well done, and it's just beautiful scenery again, and beautiful music. And you're popping a lot in the background, damn it.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. I'm just
I
messing.
am.
You're fine. Like
Okay.
it's not too bad, but it is, it's
Oh,
noticeable.
sorry about that. But maybe if I'll talk, it will change. But this
Maybe.
is the episode. This is the episode you say broke you.
This
I
isn't the
broke
episode that
me.
broke me, but this one definitely hit home. But there's another episode that really broke me, though. But I'm curious,
Is
which
it episode?
episode?
Is it episode 11?
Not 11, but 10. 10,
Or
man. 10 hit me.
11
Especially
is the
the ending
one.
for 10. But I can see why 11, too.
11 is the one with the mother, right? I'm not using it again.
Nope, that's 10. That is 10. 11 is the one where she travels to that military camp and she spends that night with
Oh,
a
so
dying
no.
soldier.
I meant 10, man. 10
It is the one with the war
broke me.
widow, yes, and her young daughter.
And fuck, man.
Yeah,
How the hell else can I even describe this? Like really?
just finding out at the end, you kind of realize it to begin with that you probably, it hints at it like, oh, and you kind of figure it out pretty quickly that she's writing all right. So the episode 10, and spoilers, we're not going through these things in order. We're kind of just talking about it in a general
Yeah,
sense.
we explained this already.
Yeah. But episode 10 is Violet visits a war widow, and who is very ill. She's very much going to probably die somewhat soon. And she has a young girl. And Violet's presence, and they sort of kind of get along, sort of kind of don't get along. And the young
She's mad that Violet kind of takes away her time with her
Mhm.
mother, but at the same time, she doesn't hate Violet as a person. They do get along and play together and stuff.
Mhm. And it's also, very cute because the young girl doesn't quite get that Violet is a human. She thinks she's an actual doll. And most
Yes.
certainly Violet doesn't help this through some of her mannerisms and everything, right? But
Mhm.
something that, as you find out, the mother tells her daughter, her daughter asks who the letters are for, and her mother tells her for someone who's very far away, right? And then they spend the rest of the
Mhm.
time writing letters for 7 days. And you have,
Yeah.
Violet and the young girl do different things together, and eventually she gets upset with her mother and tells her, why won't you spend time with me? All these other people are coming here, taking your time away from me. I know you're not getting any better. I'm not an idiot, right? I do get it.
Mhm.
And,
Yes.
you see at the very end of this episode where you find out all the letters that Violet was writing was for the young girl from her mother. And basically, you get to
Mhm.
see the entire thing of, her growing up and getting each letter right. Like the show flashes forward to show you some of that, some of what she wrote. And at the very end of that all, you kind of get to see Violet, break down, right? Because
Mhm.
she talks about how she had to hold in her tears and her feelings the entire time while there, and she couldn't tell Anne, the young girl, anything about what she was doing or writing.
Mhm.
And she finally breaks down
And
on that, and it kind of, and she says it's so sad that she's going to be so lonely for all that time in that big house all by herself. And
yes.
that's, another
And
feeling that Violet, another, feeling and emotion that Violet comes to understand and learn.
but I think the thing that broke me, like you said, I kind of get it. I kind of at some point I kind of got it. I kind of got it that this that the reason the mother has Violet there is to leave the letters to her daughter each year after she's gone.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when it does happen, you show how the daughter, grows up and opens these letters each year, and how her life goes on. This hurts, man. This hurts.
Hmm.
Like, so yeah, that's a thing.
Yep. It's great to see those changes and just, yeah, and also I think it's at this point really that you kind of finally see just how much Violet herself has grown, right? From the very
Yeah.
beginning where she's extremely emotionless and you have people pointing out, right, how she doesn't really show her emotions all that much when she talks, to this point where you see her finally, share empathy with someone else, right? Where she has empathy for someone else in their position of, and that idea of being lonely for most of their life and losing someone important to them
Yep.
after having known that person. Like it's genuinely really heartfelt and emotional. And that's the episode that I think probably hits most people. I
Yeah,
would be
like
willing to bet.
the friend that recommended warned me about this one.
Mm.
But yeah, so but there's so this was an
Going
episode
back,
that
right?
hit home. But actually, one episode that I enjoyed. Not when I say it hit me, I don't mean in that it made me cry necessarily, but
Hmm.
it hit me kind of like in a personal level because I kind of identified with Violet in that situation, and that's the one where she's writing letters for the princess,
Hmm.
who like she writes
Episode
princess
5, Princess
like
Charlotte.
yeah, that well she writes letters in the princess's name to the prince she's
Courting, right?
yeah,
Betrothed
that
to, I should say. Yeah, not courting.
yeah, she's engaged to marry, and it's like and it is kind of to see them bond, and that the princess actually cares for that guy, and that guy actually cares for her, and yeah, and again, it's kind of one of those things that, for one, it is nice to see that Violet can help these two, and that they actually end up happy together. But at the same time, I helped a lot of my friends with their relationships, throughout my life. So it was kind of nice to see in a meta sense. that like I can connect to this.
That's fair.
I can I can say when you see two of your friends, a friend get together with someone they like, or two of your friends get together after you see the hands, it's always an awesome feeling. Shout out to all my friends that are in a relationship that see this, and yeah, awesome, amazing feeling.
Mhm.
So I like this one too.
Absolutely. Something you mentioned earlier that I would like to bring back up again, episode 6. I talked
Yeah.
about earlier a shot that really stood out to me as for what it was trying to do and very artistic in its nature was from episode 6. You see Violet talking with Leon about kind of the past, and you hear and Violet says something along the lines of, "I'm not sure if I'm." It's not so much cut out, but she talks about how she's not sure if she should be allowed to be an auto memory stall, right? In episode 6, and it
Mhm.
kind of you see the shot pull out, and you see that they're setting in this crumbled down, destroyed building, and you immediately know again. This is why I kind of love the world building in the show, where how they tell it. You immediately know that this building was destroyed more than likely due to the war, right? That this building either fell into disrepair, or was bombed, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You just know that the idea and the indication is this building was destroyed due to the war, and that's immediately supposed to symbolize this idea of is Violet someone who kind of did take away a lot from other people? Is she allowed to be someone who
Mhm.
writes these letters for people, considering what she's
Yes.
done in the past?
Mhm.
And you see this kind of expounded upon in episode 7 as well, where she actually, you kind of see her deal with a little bit of PTSD and the fact that, she immediately realizes, at the end of episode 7, after helping the playwright and everything, that she took away a lot of else, a lot of other people's one more day, right? Of their
Mhm.
wishes, and that's kind of how
Yeah.
that affects her.
Like suddenly this humanizes. Suddenly the people she hurt, the people she killed, have faces.
Mhm.
Like maybe she prevent. That going back to episode 10 for a second. That woman who lost her husband could be one of the people Violet kills. They don't necessarily say that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. And this is something that Hodgins, that Claudia Hodgins, her caretaker, I suppose, a friend of Major Gilbert, that's something that he tells her very much early on in like the first episode or two, where you know you're going to experience this sooner or later. You're going to know what that feels like and what that means. So he doesn't quite say it in those words, and she doesn't quite get what he's talking about. But he tells her, this is something you'll experience that you don't know it yet, but you will. And again, like you go through those episodes until she finally gets to that point, and you see her finally experience that. You see her finally come to terms with what she's done and starting to face that, right? And again, like this is why I say I don't think it's untrue when someone says that Violet Evergarden is the story of recovery after a war. But I think Violet Evergarden is most definitely more so the story of this character's journey through learning to one kind of reintegrate back into society after a war, after everything she's been through and what she was trained to do, but two, learn to come to understand and know what it means to feel, what it means to care, what it means to empathize with, what it means to, as you said, say I love you. What that means and what that carries, and many other different emotions besides that and in between. Something that I kind of like, talking about episode 5 with Princess Charlotte. She's the one who tells Violet, why don't you smile more? Why don't you emote more when you talk and when you speak, right? Instead of having the exact
Mhm.
same expressionless face, which is again, and you can kind of see, each episode, even though it's very much episodic and they're very much their own contained stories, parts of one episode will be brought back up in another episode, because you see in episode 6 where Violet talks about, she says, I've been told I'm expressionless. I've been told I don't emote a lot, you know?
Actually, one thing that in episode, I think it's episode 3 as well, where she's actually being sent to you know
A
kind of a
class.
school to
Yeah.
yeah for a class to be taught how to be a doll, and And the one thing that and there's this thing that I really like, where like she's getting the writing part down. That
Mm-hmm.
when when she types, she's actually really fast,
Mm-hmm.
and like she types quick, which by the way, the way she types with those hands actually kind of reminds me of one of my colleagues, who like when he typed on his laptop, you could hear everything he typed. It was obnoxious. But, so there's this, but so that she gets the technical part, the stuff right, but then when you get past that, the letters themselves left a lot to be desired, and it's only thanks to her listening to, I forgot her name. What did you say her name was?
Oh, Laculia.
The Kulia. That listening to her, and what she wanted to say to her father, where she is starting to get it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like the idea that she has the technical part down, but it's the emotional part that needs a bit of work.
Mm-hmm.
So and the way she learns it, and the thing is that she's not nailing it there, and just in that one episode you see her improve, because there is an episode. I'm not sure if it's before or after the class, where people like come to her, and she like writes stuff, dead straight.
That's before.
She. Mhm,
That's in episode 2. She tries to write a letter and fails miserably.
mhm. Yeah, but that's the thing I like, that she in that in terms of letters like that, she's like dead on straight. No bullshit. Just saying it as it is. And this is not always the right way, especially in that regard. But then you see her like learning it as the show goes on, and how she develops into that role. It's not like one episode we see her in a class, and all of a sudden she's an expert. I don't know. You see her develop
Mm-hmm.
throughout the show. I
I
like
mean,
this.
even after the class, right? You see her still learn and still have to come to terms with
That
understanding what people mean when they say something. Like, that not always what they say is what they mean. Because the episode after the class, where she does graduate from the class eventually, right? You have episode 4 where, she goes on a trip with Iris, someone she works with, who I loved Iris, by the way. One of my favorite characters. She's fun. I enjoyed her. But yeah, she goes with Iris on a trip, right, to write letters for her, and she learns, and they have a back and forth, and I love their back and forth. And, through Iris, she kind of learns once more that she's not great at this, but that the letter she wrote did get through to the people it needed to get through eventually, right? Like,
yes.
because she tells her, oh, what was it? Oh, she tells her, at first she gets mad at her because Violet takes what she says at face value, and when she, Iris tells her, "Hey, don't tell my parent," because they go to visit her parents when they're, in where she lives, because they go back to where Iris is from, right, her home village or hometown, and while they're there, she's like, "Don't tell my parents what I," she doesn't even tell her not to tell her parents. That's just kind of implied with what she tells them, right, with what she tells Violet, but she doesn't tell Violet not to tell them. So Violet's like, "Well, they were worried about you, so I told them what you told me." And she's like, "You just don't get it." I'm paraphrasing horribly here. There's way more to it, and it's a
Yeah.
bit more emotional, I
Of
guess you'd say,
course.
than that. But it's that's the character she is, and that's what she learns throughout the series, right? You know, and that
And
she
then
never does get good at lying, but she does learn to kind of interpret the meaning behind someone's words over time.
yeah. And then this kind of culminates into the end of the show, where it kind of the thing the because I think the last 2 or 3 episodes are basically this one big action sequence on the train. I think it's the final two.
I would agree. Like it's the final two, but it also like the third one doesn't really have anything connected majorly, but a little bit. But it's definitely the final two that are all this one kind of big action sequence on the train. Yeah, which I kind of have a problem with it being an action sequence, to be honest.
I think because like we said, this kind of those shows that tries to hit a balance, in a way, and this is not hitting a balance. This is like
But
it's kind of, because suddenly it ditches one part to become full fledged shonen, for lack of a better term.
yeah, it's it's very much the show's this very, I guess you say, kind of gentle ride through learning to cope and learning to feel and learning to emote and learning to recover from loss and tragedy and what a lot of that means to then kind of go into this more action heavy sequence. And don't get me wrong, it I
Yeah,
don't
to remove any doubt, the action sequence itself is spectacular.
well, it's not just that, right? It's that I think it does belong here, right? I think it does work for what they do with it, which is very much show Violet changing from this, very much killing machine to someone who's nonviolent, who doesn't need, someone's orders to tell her what to do anymore, who can think and feel for herself now at that point. And
And that's another thing that I kind of like, that the villain, for lack of a better term, kind of calls her out on. You think you can, be this, that you can understand love you, that you can understand, being a human when you've killed so much, when you got so much blood on your hands.
mhm.
I like this idea, and I like this idea, and I like that. The I actually don't remember this. Do they kill him? Is he dead by the end of this?
The enemy general,
Yes.
I mean, he falls from an extremely high drop into water below, so after getting shot, so if he's alive, he's one hell of a dude. But I'm
Okay.
fairly
So
certain he dies.
yeah. So I wanted to
But it's not
go
her
there.
who kills him, it's her original, Major, it's, Major Gilbert's brother who kills the guy,
Yeah. But
more or less.
here's my kind of problem with this, because, like you said, it's not her that pulls the trigger, or it's not her that kills them. It's not on her hands. But at the same time, I think for the kind of taunting that he tried, that he uses on Violet, that, well, you're no better than people you killed, all the stuff. Even again, this is kind of those cases where the villain, he's gone, kind of won, because him dying and not really giving Violet much of a chance to prove herself, kind of, just kind of drops the entire thing dead.
Again, I think the idea is the fact that she takes a lot of them down non-violently, and that she
Mhm.
refuses to let anyone else die in that instance, even if they're her enemies in that regard, shows the growth and shows how she's. Again, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be someone wins. It's to be
It,
her growth and how she truly has changed and how she's become better than what she was, right? How
okay,
she's
that's
grown.
fair. That's fair. I'll give you that one.
I think
But
that's the point of it. And which, again, that's what I mean when I say I think in that regard it does belong and it does work. I just personally would have liked to have seen this entire show go, if it could, without the idea of the violence, maybe without the idea of her having to prove that, and just showing her continuing to do what she was doing and the growth in that way. But, you know, maybe that's just me thing. Maybe I'm reading it wrong and it actually should and does belong even more than what I think, which is definitely possible, right? I can definitely get stuff wrong here. It's just mostly a me thing. I would have been interested to see it without that, and if it could still manage to give the same impactful ending. But even with that said, I do think what's here is good and is worth still. It's still worth the watch for episode 11 and 12 is what we're talking about specifically here. Like I
yeah.
think it absolutely belongs and leads well into that episode 13 ending where we see Violet meet with Major Gilbert's mother, and he she finally and she tells Violet in episode 13 where you know she loved Gilbert, and and Gilbert will always be with her because of that love, and that's when you finally see Violet come to understand what it means to love, right? What it means to love someone, to carry them with you, even if you've potentially lost them.
Mhm. Well, but that's kind of bringing up some. It's not related to the show, but
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, what I mean is that considering her character, Violet's character, and in that regard, I do wonder what exactly a movie can be.
With this,
Because how much can because check the special and the movie out eventually,
mm-hmm.
because where can she go from there as a character? I'm actually interested in seeing what they can do with it.
So, from my understanding, from what little I have seen of the movie, it's Violet's not necessarily the focus, I think, from my understanding, but I could be entirely wrong on that. Again, I have no clue about the special or the movie either. So I have no idea what they do with that. The only thing I know is that, from what I understand, Violet may not necessarily be the focus within the movie. That it might be focusing on the other character within the movie and how through Violet's experience of what she's lived through and how she's learned to, you know, feel and understand what many different emotions mean, she can get through to that other character. I think that's kind of the idea, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, that's fair. But so again, I think this is one of those. I guess we'll see when we get to the movie.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask, right?
Yes,
Favorite episode,
probably.
quote unquote favorite, since favorite.
I'll say that in terms of like favorite to watch. Like I left with kind of a happy feeling. I'll say either the princess one or or the comet one. So either 5 or 6. In
Okay.
terms of in terms of it hit me hard. 10.
Mm. I think if I had to pick, like, I left with more of a happy feeling. I really enjoyed this, and it made me smile a lot. I would say episode 4 because I kind of just really enjoyed Iris and Violet's back and forth a lot.
Okay.
And if I had to pick, an episode that really hit me hard, probably 10, maybe 11. It'd be really close. 7 as well, one of those three. But yeah, probably leaning more towards 10 like you as well. Because,
So
damn.
so we kind of talked about this. So let me ask you. I know that there's the special in the movie, which we'll get to at some point. But my question is, if they are going to make a second season, where do you think they could take this? What would you like to see?
I wouldn't.
Hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's probably things they could do with it. I'm not going to say they can't. But I think season 1 is enough, personally. I think one season and where it ends, I think that is enough. I think I wouldn't need, or I don't really want to see more. Like, being
I
completely honest, the movie might be amazing, the special might be amazing, but I'm not like, I'm not, I don't want to rush out to watch those things immediately. I don't have to, because having watched these 13 episodes, I think I'm happy seeing this story end where it ends. I think I have my conclusion. I've seen, Violet travel to all these different places, meet all these different people, and grow and learn through each of them, and come to the place of understanding that she was searching for by the end of it. Sure, there's things that I could maybe want to see and know how they happen or what happens with this particular character or things like that, but I don't have to.
okay, that's fair. And you know what? For the most part, I can't do on this that I don't really want another season because this did feel like we closed everything we have to do, and I also while
You're
what
breaking
can
up
be necessary.
somewhat.
Oh,
Can you
can
repeat
you
that a
hear me
little bit?
now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're just breaking up a little bit right there. Can you repeat that?
Okay. So I said that I kind of agree with you that with the kind of character development while it went through, I'm not necessarily sure what can be really achieved with a second season.
Hmm.
Aside from seeing more of her work, but at the same time, what's the point if it's not if it has no point? Then what? You know, like
Hmm.
so. I can agree with you, but at the same time, if they do decide, what, we're making another season, I would like to see where it goes. They could
I would
probably
be
do
interested.
something.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I would definitely be interested, and I would definitely watch it. But I'm not. I'm not gonna, run out of my way to watch it immediately, and I have to have it, and I definitely
Yeah,
need it. You know.
I won't be hyped for it like I was hyped for, say, Shiva, for example.
Hmm. Yeah. A question to you know ask you. We've been,
Yeah.
we went from one heavy show to another heavy show, but I have to ask, in terms of, talking about 13 Reasons Why and talking about Violet Evergarden, which would you say would be more impactful
Hmm.
to you
Okay.
at least?
Okay. To me personally, I mean, it is kind of interesting on the one hand, I would say certain reasons why can probably connect more
Hmm.
because everyone went to high school, everyone heard about those things, a lot of people have gone through the things that this show is talking about. So, as in terms of what can touch people more, I'll probably say certain reasons why it's probably easier for people to get accustomed to something they know.
Hmm.
On the other hand, in terms of hitting those fields, I don't think certain reasons why ever actually made me. It made me uncomfortable. It made me sad, but I won't say I ever cried at it.
But not just crying, right? Like, to me, right, both 13 Reasons Why and both, Violet Evergarden are both heavy, right? They're heavy shows in terms of
Yeah.
what their subject matter pertains to more often than not. But at the same time, I think 13 Reasons Why loses a lot because it tries to veil or kind of cloak a lot of that heaviness in drama, right? And Violet Evergarden doesn't really have a lot of drama until maybe the very end, and even then, I don't know
You
if
know,
I'd still call it
that
drama.
I think I have something to say here, in
Hmm.
terms of getting it, because in terms of getting the messages across. Then I would say that the thing about Violet Garden is that there is a message there, but at the same time, I would say there's no real focus on it.
Hmm.
You can walk out of this show and feel like you get something without even hearing the message. With certain reasons why there is a message, but that message, for one, is it kind of contradicts itself with how it's been presented in the show,
Hmm.
and two, it feels like they're kind of writing the story around the message rather than the message around the story.
Well, it also feels muddy, if you ask me. Like, again, it kind of goes back to there's all these other things they have to involve with drama that muddies a lot of their message and takes away from it. I feel compared to something like Violet Evergarden, which again is when you get down to it, it's very straightforward. But if you start to dig into it, there's a lot more underneath, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, which show do I prefer? It's something I need to think about
Well, I mean,
more.
in
But
that way, you're probably comparing apples to oranges somewhat, right?
yeah, because
They are very different.
just because both are heavy shows doesn't mean you can. It's easy to compare.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I will say that if I have, however, to choose, but I am fully aware though that for the average Joe, the one that looks for something to connect with, certain reasons why has much more of an edge over Violet Evergarden, then because it represents life basically.
I
You
would
could say
disagree.
you could say, hmm?
I would disagree. I think Violet Evergarden would have an edge over 13 Reasons Why more so.
Hmm. Well, you know, it's kind of something that honestly, you know what, I want to make a poll and see what people would answer.
Oh boy.
You know, just for the hell of it. But
Straw poll
but
link in the comments below.
oh yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let's can do this.
Making me do more work. But yeah, I thought I'd bring that up because it is interesting to go from one heavy show like 13 Reasons Why to another heavy show like Violet Evergarden. And unlike you who watched Violet Evergarden quite a bit ago, after we covered 13 Reasons Why, that's when I went in to watch Violet Evergarden. Whew.
Yeah. No. Definitely do not try and binge shows together. You would hate yourself. You would hate life.
I don't know if you'll hate life, but you'll definitely be sad.
Oh my god. Okay. Wolf. Crossover idea. Hannah
No.
Baker hires Violet
No.
Evergarden to write the tapes for her. Boom.
No.
Done.
Bad.
Yes.
Boo.
Yes.
Wrong.
Yeah. Yes. Best
Just wrong.
crossover idea. Somebody fucking write that. I would read that. It was. I'm half joking.
I know.
Okay. But I think that's all we have to say about Violet Evergarden, unless you have something to add.
Go watch this show. I think it's absolutely worth a watch. There's a lot you can pick up from it. And, I've been saying this and I'll continue to say it. There's so much here you can talk about in regards to this show. From many different angles. Many different angles that you could look at and go into and talk about this show. And a lot of its different themes and even morals and the lessons it's trying to teach and the different emotions it wants to get across in any given situation and any given scene that we don't cover on here, right? You could spend many episodes talking about Violet Evergarden, I'm sure, especially if you get the right people on. So yeah, go watch it, go experience it for yourself. There's definitely a lot here that we haven't talked about, and the stuff we did talk about we probably haven't even done justice, right? So go watch it.
So with that said, that's all for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed what your thoughts about it. Have you watched it? Are you planning on watching it? If so, why the hell are you listening until this point? Because we kind of spoiled the whole thing. But have you watched it? What do you think? Favorite episode, favorite moments? What episode made you cry? You can tell us all about this in the comment section below. On our Tumblr, which is Bearcast Team, and on our Twitter, which is Bearcast with a capital B, capital C. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.